especially in these last days when he was supposed to be kind of under, jokingly, house arrest. He was supposed to be behaving himself and be good. But the man died as he lived. He was a pastor. He was a shepherd. He was always going out. And how often we've heard the word accompaniment that was going to be so linked to his pontificate. Always going out to people. And even in his sickness, even giving Easter eggs, I believe, to Vice President Vance's children. That's the man who he was and who he consistently was. And so, a 12-year pontificate draws to a close. A man of faith lived, and how wonderful that this gracious shepherd returned to the Lord on the Easter Monday, the day after Easter. So consistent to the end. And so as a church we mourn. He touched many lives in many ways over the past 12 years.
Archbishop, we hear the term the People's Pope a lot this morning. How do you think you really earned that title?
I was chuckling to myself when I was listening to media reports this morning. I was thinking of Princess Diana, but as far as the people's princess. But he was that, just in reiterating, to say that he always went out to the fringe of life, to where people were at. In a sense, again and again and again, he struck me so much like our Lord. He went out. He didn't wait for people to sign up or join up. He went out like Jesus did to the tax collector, or to the sycamore tree for Zacchaeus, or to the shore for Peter and Andrew and James and John, and hence that title. And again, it was reiterated in so many ways by the way he lived. Very much he was centered, not in buildings and structures, but in the people of God.
Archbishop, how has his leadership and his legacy kind of come through to the Archdiocese of Milwaukee?
Well, I think, certainly he was a man of controversy, and so, you see various reactions, in a sense, at least while he was living, their experience of him and, his style of leadership and the like, but certainly there was a humanity about Pope Francis that you couldn't help but love, because he simply cared about people. And so, again, that if that's one of the things that'll be the hallmark of his pontificate. And I believe he touched, and even, the responses of people, in these months, these time of illness, the concern for him, thinking, sometimes that the Archbishop has an inside track with the Pope's doctors of, well, how is he doing? And I rely on as much the media reports as most folks do. But they were concerned. If they didn't care, they wouldn't ask. But then always assuring, or bringing the assurance with it of prayer.
You talked about how he cared about people and how he tried to bring more people in, and there were certainly gestures towards inclusivity with LGBTQ and other communities, people who've been divorced, that type of thing. And he got a little blowback about that. Is that kind of the controversy you're referring to?
Sure. In many of those kinds of things, he brought everybody to the table. And that's a gift. Not to say that you necessarily agree with everybody at the table, but if you can't have a conversation, you can't do anything more. It's dead in the water. So as long as you can bring people together to talk, there's the possibility of growth, of change, of new ideas, and that's what he was good at. In many ways, he was a Jesuit. His style of training, his style of thinking, being able to ask the questions, not afraid of them, to ask the difficult questions, and even the whole notion of synodality, because of course then we want to impose, at least in this country, the notion of democracy. Well, I put in my vote, I put in my request, and that's the way things are going to be. Well, I just told you what I want, Francis, in a true sense, his concern was to hear and to listen and to hear people. It didn't just then presume it was all going to change.
I know you got a chance to meet him personally. Tell me what that was like, and maybe how you will yourself?
As much as you can say hello to or get to know personally the man, I met him in September of 2022 at being a new bishop, going to what they call new bishop school. And so there were 170 of us queued up. So you can figure the line moved kind of quickly. So you get to say hello and some word of something and that. But with him, and it's a gift, in standing with him in that moment, I felt like I was the only person standing in that room. He wasn't looking over my shoulder, who's going to come next, or who's a bigger hitter, or who's a whatever. He was fixed on the person that was standing in front of him. And that's his legacy, because that translated into everything else he did. He saw the person in front of him. He didn't see a problem. He didn't see an ideology or an issue. He saw a person, and then was able to move from there. Of course, it got him in trouble at times, because other people immediately imposed their ideology. Say, well, that's not the right person to be talking to. You know, I mean, they should be out of the church, or they should be. Pope Francis presumed that everyone had the potential of God's grace and of salvation.
Archbishop Grob, when you saw Pope Francis yesterday addressing the crowds at the Vatican and riding through the crowds, and then to hear the news today, what did you think about that? That just on his second to last day of life, he was out there.
True to form for him.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, like I said, he was a pastor and a shepherd to his dying breath, literally. You know, he met with people, he worked the crowd, so to speak. He went home and he died. And it's not a bad model for us. His life is complete. What do we take away from that? Because it's our turn. We have to keep going. We have to live in the light of his pontificate and of what we believe as Catholics, as Christians, as people of goodwill. We have to carry on. And we do so in sadness with his passing, but it's our turn. And so, again, and so much of that is his legacy, because he didn't build idols. He didn't build monolithic things to his memory. I mean, in fact, I'm guessing as things are going to be rolled out with regards to his funeral even, there's going to be a very different simplicity to it. He didn't want to be buried as a monarch. He wanted to be buried as a servant.
On that note, what's next? Do you say, it's time to carry it on?
Well, I mean, in a sense, there's a very set protocol for these days, 9 days of mourning, and then the funeral, and then going into the conclave. So I mean, it's very, very set steps and all those things. So it's kind of stay tuned as they unfold. And I think the kind of that formula is out there. I mean, it's kind of like, okay, now at least for this local church, what are we going to do? So at noon today, the bells at the cathedral will toll 88 times for each year of his life. There will be a simple, kind of a regular, if you will, mass, a 5:15 mass at the cathedral. It would be in the body of the church proper instead of in the chapel, so if more people want to attend. Already the Easter candle that was just blessed on Saturday night is standing near the ambo, and his photograph is there. The cathedral will be open all day for people to come and to pay their respects. And then, I mean, in parishes, there's directives, so that, parishes, as they are able or see fit, to remember him in mourning and in prayer. And we're looking at kind of what are the next steps, So things are happening in varying degrees over these next 2 weeks.
Archbishop, what is your message to those who may be kind of mourning and kind of uncertain of what comes next in the church after the passing of Pope Francis?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is, timing is everything. And again, just what happened with his life yesterday and passing, and, in a sense, to go out, what a time of the year to go out, to go home. I mean, everything that he had lived and believed, and it happens that he passes, between Easter Sunday and Easter Monday, early this morning, whenever exactly that was. But I mean, for him, the message hopefully, and for all of us, is to continue to step into the fray. We certainly have to continue to assure and shore up the people who are already present in our churches for worship, for prayer, that are praying, the faithful. But how do we continue to go out to people, regardless of who they are? In a sense, ours is not the seat of judgment. Ours should be the seat of mercy and bringing people in. And so how do we do that? It's a learning curve that I think we have to look at every day, not just as a church, but as individuals.
So what do you hope to see in the next Pope?
The successor of St. Peter. And I don't mean to be smart in saying that. I mean, in a sense, there's going to be a group of cardinals that are going to go into a conclave. There's the old joke that the man going in as Pope comes out as a cardinal. So in a sense, as much as there's the human dimension, and even, dare I say, the politics, we also believe as people of faith that the Holy Spirit is at work in that. And I think back, I have a great devotion and love for Pope, St. John the 23rd. He's supposed to be an interim Pope, and just keep the seat warm for a couple of years and go into glory while we kind of groom somebody else. And he turned the church on its head. And then you look at, if you just trace the trajectory of the last couple of popes, from Paul VI, John Paul I, John Paul II, Benedict, diverse ideologies, if you will, or traditions, and yet, so in a sense for me, it's kind of like, stay tuned in the best sense, and pray, pray that the cardinals that go into the conclave set aside personal issues and do their best to elect who will be the next best successor to St. Peter.
Archbishop, from my understanding, the canonization was on Friday. Is there any delays to that? Any delays on that since the passing of Pope Francis?
I'm missing
The canonization of
Carlos Acutis. No, because that's done. The ritual, at least my understanding, I haven't looked at the specifics of it. But if it has been announced that he is to be canonized, that means that a process is done. My sense is that maybe the ritual actually hasn't done the actual formal ceremony of canonization. So it's maybe this in-between time. So if anything, my guess, it'll be put on hold. But I don't think in any way it's going to be rescinded.
Because it is such a, I'd say, challenging time for the church and moving forward, like you said, drawing more people in or in a lot of cases back into the church.
Yeah.
What message would the next Pope need to send to do that?
I think that, I've said it in different ways in other interviews. The pendulum seldom stays long in the middle. It swings from one extreme to the other. So much of that is life. We can have another side discussion of American politics and whatever, the extremes. If anything, we best hope to pray, in the sense that someone is elected that can walk a middle course, because that's the more difficult. It's easy to be in a polarity. That's the easiest thing in the world. But to be able to walk into the mix and to chart a middle course, again, where all voices are heard. They're not threatened. They're not seen as threatening. Because how else? Again and again, we see in Scripture the call that there is to be one flock and one shepherd. It's not, this crowd or that crowd or whatever crowd. It's one, meaning in the wholeness. And so, again, it is hope and pray, that be a focus, but I know it's something I won't be privy to, so.
If you're done with your questions, we have Bishop Haynes and Bishop Sherman who can talk about their personal experiences with the Pope. Okay.
Do you want me to stay up here or do you want me to step up? Thank you again
This
very
is
much.
Bishop Haynes.
Hi, Jeff Haynes. I met Pope Francis twice, and I actually had a third chance to do so, and I'll tell you about that one later. Like Archbishop Grob, Jim and I were together at the Baby Bishop School in September of 2017, and at the end of the classes, you have that chance to meet him, and so you're in that long line that Archbishop Grob talked about, and I was thinking, well, what do I say to the Pope? So I got up there, and a lot of the guys were introducing themselves, and I thought, well, that's not going to mean much to him. But what's interesting is that when they started to come up, they all wanted to kiss his ring. And then after a while, he says, no. He wasn't into the fancy type things. He just wanted to greet us. So I said to him, Holy Father, I want to thank you for being Pope. And he just said to me, pray for me, which I thought was beautiful. And the second time I had a chance to meet him, our Region 7 of the USCCB, which is Wisconsin, Indiana, and Illinois, you have these meetings about it used to be 5 years, now they're about 9 to 10 years. So you go and you report to all the dicasteries, the offices in the Vatican, and at the end you have a meeting with the Holy Father. It was interesting the way it was set up. The other bishops who'd been to these synod, or to these ad limina visits, usually you came in, there was a microphone, and then there was audience seating, And when we walked in, no, it was circular. It was in a circle, and Holy Father was sitting there, and he said, just want to welcome you to this. He said, we're going to have a conversation. And he says, there's coffee and water over there, and you just have someone to introduce people, and you can ask questions, you can give me your opinion. He said, if you want, you can complain to me. He says, we're all brothers as bishops. I'm open to that. And they expected, the other bishops who'd been there before said, usually he starts talking, the Pope does, and then after about 15 minutes, someone taps him on the shoulder and off he goes. He was with us an hour and 20, listening and interacting in a beautiful way. The chance I had was recently, I was taking a pilgrimage group of 76 people from the Archdiocese of Milwaukee to Rome in September, from the 12th to the 18th. And I didn't think we would get to see the Pope at all. He had been on a 2-week trip to Asia and Oceania, and I thought he'd be so exhausted. He's not gonna show up. Well, he was there for the Sunday Angelus and the blessing, and then Wednesday we had the papal audience, which is in the square out in front of the Basilica, St. Peter's Basilica. And I walked in, and there weren't that many bishops there. I guess they were all waiting for this year, which was the Jubilee year. So there was maybe about 15 up there. And the ushers kept waving for me to go up, because I was in my regalia. And they were saying, come up, you get to see and you get to talk to the Holy Father. And then I thought about the Holy Father and about how he always said the shepherd needs to be with his flock. And I said, no, I want to stay with my people, and I want to share this experience with them. And so it was beautiful to go on, and near the end, at the end of all the things that go with that visit, they had a little prayer, and this meant a lot to me. It was from Matthew 28:16 to 20, which is the commissioning discourse at the end of the Gospel of Matthew. But what it also contains is the famous line, and behold, I am with you always. That's my bishop's motto. So to hear that and to have the Pope speak about that really touched my heart. And I think at this time to remember, behold, I'm with you always, that's also a motto which speaks to the presence of our Holy Father. He will be with us in all the things that he taught us and he showed us. So thank you very much.
Do you have any questions for Bishop Haynes? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think some of them do want to get pictures of your pictures after Bishop Sherman.
Did you want English and Spanish?
Is Telemundo here?
We are also shooting for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we could.
Do you want him to also say something in Spanish?
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Why don't you do English first?
And then a few words.
Yeah, and then a few words in Spanish. Yeah.
Well, I'm Bishop Jim Sherman, Auxiliary Bishop of the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, along with Bishop Haynes. And it was really a kind of a shock and very sad this morning to wake up to the news during this very joyful season that Pope Francis had passed away. Pope Francis has been very special to me because of his message. He is the Pope who really proclaimed the joy of the gospel and called all of us to be missionary disciples in this world, to go forth to proclaim the good news, mainly by the way we live our lives. He had a great compassion for the poor, for the migrants, for those on the margins of society, great compassion and love for all those who struggle in this world. And he also had a way of calling all of us to be signs of hope for the world. We are in the year of Jubilee, and the main theme for this year is hope. And in order to bring hope to this world, Pope Francis encouraged us to be signs of hope to the poor, signs of hope to the youth, signs of hope to all those who struggle in this world. And for that reason, Pope Francis has been really a special messenger of love and peace in this world for me. Fue una gran tristeza experimentar las noticias hoy de la muerte de el Papa Francisco. El Papa Francisco fue una persona muy especial para mí porque siempre ha proclamado la alegría del Evangelio. El Papa fue como una persona que ha tenido compasión para los más pobres, para los migrantes, para los en las márgenes de nuestra sociedad. Siempre nos ha enseñado que es necesario para nosotros ser mensajeros de la paz, mensajeros del amor y sobre todo mensajeros de la esperanza en este mundo. Este año es el año jubilar que tiene el tema de esperanza. Y el Papa Francisco siempre nos han dicho que para traer esperanza a este mundo tenemos que ser señales, signos de esperanza para los demás, para los pobres, para los jóvenes, para los migrantes y los demás que sufren en este mundo. En este día, al contemplar su vida, yo sí tengo un sentido de alegría durante este tiempo de la resurrección de Jesucristo, porque el Papa siempre ha tratado de ser una reflexión de Cristo para los demás. Entonces, en este día quiero darle gracias a Dios por los años de que el Papa Francisco fue como para nosotros el buen pastor. Gracias.
Did you want to mention anything? Is there anything interesting about your meeting with him?
I think
They covered?
Jeff covered it
Okay.
really well. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
I think we can wrap up.
Thank you, everyone.
I-
You came together so quickly.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I do have pictures of Archbishop Grob with Pope Francis on this, so I can email this to your stations. And then, do you want to get some pictures of Bishop Haynes with him in your office? Yeah. Steve, can you take them down to Bishop Haynes' office, because we're going to